10 years ago, the WWE spring cleaning was a thing you could set your watch to reliably every single year. Mania would happen. A couple of weeks later, on a random Friday at 5 p.m., once the markets had closed and it was not going to affect the stock price, you would see a press release saying these 5 or 10 superstars have been released. We wish them the best in their future endeavors. But in the last couple of years, they've had so much money, they can afford to pay folks they're not going to use to sit around and do a whole lot of nothing. What's good, Internet? My name is Attack Slug. This is the single largest talent purge that I can recall in my memory from WWE, and it is an absolute bloodbath Wednesday, Bloody Wednesday. And certainly a once-in-100 years global pandemic is not something you really plan for, either financially or otherwise. So from a business perspective, I can understand, hey man, we want our stock price going back up. Let's cut some talent that are mostly used on house shows and move it right along because A, we're not running house shows, and B, we can always hire them back later. But for a company that supposedly has so much in cash reserves, and when you consider the current state of the wrestling business, as in there isn't really a wrestling business right now, it just makes them look like absolute monsters to put out anybody who doesn't want to be out right now. Like the Revival last week, sure, they've wanted out for a while, but some of the names on this list did not want to go anywhere. Right now, they can't go anywhere because, like, nobody's going to be really hiring and there aren't any indies running shows to even go to, and even the other big companies kind of aren't doing a whole lot of anything in this current global pandemic. So let's run down this list of names in the greatest purge in WWE history. Obviously, top of the list, biggest name, biggest loss, biggest issue, and this ain't gonna play because this is a green screen, but you know, when you got a green bill on your hat on a green screen and green right here, it's not gonna... Rusev, man. Rusev. Happy Rusev Day forever. How can you fire Rusev on Rusev Day? Handsome Rusev rode to WrestleMania on a freaking tank. Rusev is the epitome. He is the gold standard for turning chicken shit into chicken salad. That dude has gotten so many garbage things over through his natural charisma and ability. They say to get over in the wrestling business, you need 3 things: wrestling ability, talking ability, and the intangible it factor, and some combination of those 3 will get you over. Rusev definitely has all 3, and man, they just gave him junk and he got it over. And as a reminder, when you are a heel and people start chanting for your stuff like Rusev Day, when you're a heel, WWE, which by extension is Vince's ideas, he don't like that. They don't want you getting over when you're not supposed to get over. So when you have an entire arena chanting Rusev Day and it's not even your match, you aren't even in the arena at the moment, they don't take too kindly to that. Man, Rusev can go anywhere and do anything at this point. I'm not sure what his indie name is going to be, but good God, that is a huge loss for a quality guy, and perhaps he wanted out. Like, he's always kind of been back and forth on Twitter, and you can't tell what's trolling and what's not. So if he wanted out and they gave him out, then good for him. He can go just about anywhere and do great things. But on a side note, Rusev taking 25 grand of his own money to pay WWE production guys who were obviously laid off or furloughed or whatever, like, number 1, that makes him awesome. Number 2, that shouldn't be his job. That should be WWE's job, and that makes them look like even bigger scumbags than they already are. Rusev Day forever, man. Rusev Day forever. Next on the list is Drake Maverick, a dude who definitely seems like he did not want to get fired. He did not want to get released, and the weirdest part is that he's booked for that interim cruiserweight title tournament that hasn't been filmed yet, hasn't happened yet, and it's not a single elimination, it's round robin. He has at least 3 matches in that tournament, which I don't think he'll win, certainly. But man, that's just like another dude that, granted, his size was never going to get him onto, you know, a huge program on the main card, on the main roster. But as a manager, as a GM, again, a dude who could get stuff over because he is super talented at getting stuff over. His chase for the 24/7 title, amazing. Like, a talent like that, letting them go, what are you doing? Drake Maverick was an asset no matter what position you put him in that company. The man pissed his pants on live TV for real. Like, that kind of dedication to his craft, and you let him go, what are you doing? Now, on the topic of getting yourself over when they don't want you to be over on TV, if you think they didn't like that, getting yourself over when they don't want you to be over on the internet, they extra don't like that, and Zack Ryder was released. A guy that, man, reinvented the whole wrestler on YouTube thing. He was the pioneer. He did that, and the push they gave him because of that absolutely buried him with the whole Eve and Kane and Cena thing a bunch of years back. Like, he sold them so much merchandise, and they never saw it in Zack Ryder. They kept him around, certainly. They gave him a moment or two, here or there, big pops, big stuff, but he was never factored into any kind of a major thing because of how he got himself over in that time frame. And it's just a shame, man, because he's certainly good at what he does, and he has a great mind for the business, but it was WWE doing their stubborn WWE thing, not understanding how the internet works, because of course they didn't. When you have Raw in Long Island, and you have The Rock on Raw, and their fans are chanting for Zack Ryder, and Zack Ryder isn't even on the show or booked, that's how they feel about Zack Ryder. So that one, I'm surprised by it, but how they've treated him over the years, I'm not that surprised. But also, Curt Hawkins is out of there. So Edge comes back after 9 years, and both Edge heads, I'll see you later. I'm sure we'll see Curt Hawkins on a certain YouTube show sooner than later, and that will be a good thing for everybody, I would hope. The best tag team in the world, they won a trophy in Saudi, and they were in the main event of Night 1 of WrestleMania, Anderson and Gallows. And again, that's one of those cases where WWE will sign talent because they don't want other companies to have talent. Whether that be New Japan, whether that be AEW, etc., etc. They spent so long, the past couple of years, hiring all the top talent from all the top companies because they don't want them making those companies any bigger than they already are, and Anderson and Gallows on top of that list. And yeah, they were multiple-time tag team champions. They were involved in a bunch of big stuff. The club in WWE was never really what it should have been, and generally an afterthought in a lot of their run. But it is staggering how you go from being involved in that match, in the Boneyard match, and then like 10 days later, peace. Now we know that WWE tends to squander talent they buy from elsewhere who got over elsewhere, but they can also squander homegrown talent, and Heath Slater, the one-man band, much like Rusev, has gotten a bunch of dumb things over. He was the hottest free agent in WWE history. He was the one-man band. He was in 3MB. He was getting beat up by legends every single week, and it all worked. He is that talented, and we hope that Heath Slater can follow the footsteps of Jinder and Drew, in that he will hopefully leave, reinvent, and then come back and win a WWE World title. You never know, man. Wrestling business is crazy, but he's got kids. He's got kids, and you got rid of him. What are you doing? Heath Slater is the kind of guy you thought would have been there for life. And no, he got cut like everybody else. It is just an absolute waste for how talented that Heath Slater is at getting the dumbest stuff over and all the things they gave him, Slater Gator, all that stuff. He got it over, and that's not enough. That's not enough. Good old EY Eric Young was on this list, and man, can you picture a larger fail of an NXT call-up than when they called up Sanity to SmackDown minus Nikki Cross, and then had Sanity get single-handedly trounced by The Miz. If your badass squad of dudes gets single-handedly trounced by Brock Lesnar, I understand. The Big Show, I understand. Kane, Taker, etc., etc., I understand. If your faction of badass dudes gets beat up by The Miz, you might as well just call it a day. That's just ridiculous. And I had thought he was going into more of a producer role as of late, but it seems like instead they had him also chasing for that 24/7 title, and now he's just done, and it sucks, man. Big Red Eric Rowan. One of only 2 men to have been in the only stairs match in WWE. One half of the Bludgeons, 1/3 of the Wyatts. The man who had that amazing angle as the heater for Daniel Bryan and the doppelganger on SmackDown that never got resolved. That was one of the most hilarious angles of last year. And never a great singles guy. That whole thing with the spider was, yeah, alright, sure. If and when New Japan reopens, give me a big hoss run for Eric Rowan in New Japan. I know he's worked over there before for Noah, so please, that could be money. Put Eric Rowan in the G1. Now, not everyone on this list I am super high on. Sarah Logan, post Riot Squad, I never really had a good feel for what her character was supposed to be. And I had thought that maybe when they were doing this whole Viking Raiders and Street Profits thing, we're going to have the Profits and Bianca versus the Raiders, and Logan at some point would have made sense, but not going to happen now. So I guess best of luck to her, but I don't know that I ever really saw the potential there for her to have a big run in that division. But again, leave, reinvent, come back, you never know. And speaking of No Way Jose, who essentially had the same gimmick as Adam Rose, more or less. No Way Jose, who they literally flew out to work Raw this week on Monday. They flew him to Florida to work Raw and job to Bobby Lashley, and then on Wednesday released him. What kind of monster? Like, you could have fired him at home, where he was at home, not flew him out to Raw to fire him. Like, that's just mean. It's just mean, man. It's unnecessary. You could have had anybody else job to Lashley on Raw. Why'd you have to fly out No Way Jose to do that? That's just not right, man. Mike and Maria Kanellis. I just want to give them a round of applause. Mike and Maria working the system, fleecing the system. They got hired, immediately had a baby, came back, signed a new deal, immediately had another baby, and then wanted their release. And guess what? Now you've got it. You've got a bunch of money and 2 kids. Have fun. Like, they worked that system perfectly. It is amazing how they managed to do that. So, again, round of applause for those 2. And that brings us to the top 1%. EC3, who was Derek Bateman, left, went to Impact, reinvented, they hired him back, and then completely squandered what he was good at, which was talking. Like, they had him in NXT for a little bit, and then, oh my god, panic call-ups. Call up EC3, and Lacey, and Lars. And when you panic book that stuff because of your Raw ratings dying, and then say, oh my god, here's some new guys, some fresh faces from NXT, and you don't have a story in place, a plan in place for that talent, they're gonna flounder. You need to have, when you call up guys, a plan in place. They didn't have one, and then the thing he's good at, which is talking, they had him not talking. And when he was fighting Dean Ambrose, when everyone knew that Dean Ambrose was leaving, they were cheering for Ambrose, who at the time was a heel. And so you end up with EC3 in the doghouse because of that, when it's like, that's not his fault. That's 100% not his fault, but that is how this petty company acts, and it is an absolute waste. Aiden English was released, the other half of making that Rusev Day thing so incredibly popular. He could wrestle, but they put him on commentary. And then that was kind of it for Aiden English. So, absolute shame for that, because I think he is good at both. And somewhere, somehow, I hope to see both Aiden and Rusev on the indies or in a different company somewhere doing that thing, because they were so freaking good at it and it was super over. Lio Rush. There's potential. I don't think we've seen the last of the man of the hour, Lio Rush. He is still very young and very talented, and granted, he's had some kind of ups and downs in the past couple of years, but the dude has it. Whatever it is, he has it either as a wrestler, as a manager, as whatever. He can talk folks into the building, and that's what you need in any wrestling company. He was amazing as the manager for Lashley. Why that ended, I'll never know, but best of luck to Lio Rush. I expect to see him back in a couple of years, no doubt. Now, in the past couple of years, every time they've had some releases and some guys getting released here and there, I always said, and yet Primo and Epico are still employed, and we kind of know why, because their dad in Puerto Rico, we get it, but man, after a super long stint in the company, basically doing a whole lot of nothing, Primo and Epico have been released, so they're back to Puerto Rico, I would imagine. But the longest tenured employee, the longest consistent tenured employee being released here, referee Mike Chioda. 31 years as a ref, and maybe he wanted to be done. He's 53. Maybe he was like, you know what? I'm good. But you're a senior official, and either he wanted to be done and he was good, or because he was the longest tenured ref, that means he made the most money being the longest tenured ref, and they are cutting costs. And if that was the case, man, that's rough. That's just, again, scumbag move. Now, on the talent side here, for talent, they listed Kurt Angle, right? Even though Kurt Angle's in-ring career is over as of Mania last year, and he's moved on to the producer backstage role, they had Kurt on here, and again, they're paying Kurt to not go somewhere else. So, certainly right now, you can't go somewhere else. And I would not be surprised to see Curt come back again in this backstage role at some point, or on-screen GM role or something, because he's Kurt freaking Angle, man. But let's get into the other producers. So these were not listed on the website, and the understanding is, man, they're producers, right? So not running house shows, not having all this other stuff on your shows, only running Raw, SmackDown, NXT. There's not a whole lot to produce right now. So your producers, Billy Kidman, Fit Finlay, Sarah Stock, Lance Storm, IRS, Pat Buck, Scott Armstrong, Shane Helms, The Hurricane, and Daivari. I would imagine seeing them back when you have more things to produce, right? So the fact that you would let go Fit Finlay and Sarah Stock, who are basically responsible for the entire crop of this whole women's division in the past number of years, like, that's talent you don't just let go. They have the brains for the business. IRS getting fired on tax day is, one, hilarious, but two, you don't let them go for that long because you want to have backstage producers who have a mind for the wrestling business. So I would certainly hope when things resume to a somewhat normal fashion, they all come back into their old jobs. It's just, a couple of months sitting at home. I would imagine, like, having Lance Storm, who literally closed his school. He closed his wrestling school, a very successful wrestling school, to do this job for a couple of months and then get released. Like, I have to imagine that the producers will be furloughed until things are back to normal because, again, when you start running house shows again, hopefully at the end of the year, we'll see, when this whole machine resumes its giant corporate machine-ness, if you don't have producers, you don't have a good show. So, fingers crossed, that is only temporary for those folks. And very briefly, it seems as if Deonna Purrazzo is done, and the writer who wrote the Otis and Mandy storyline was let go. And that's just, man, one of the best things they've done in the past couple of years, and no one is safe. So, will we see more releases in the coming week? It's possible. I think most of these guys and girls here are very talented and will hopefully land on their feet somewhere once things get back to normal. But man, this just makes the whole company look really just not great, you guys. Not great. Anyhow, I'm Attack Slug. More videos on this channel. Tune in for those right here. I'll see you next time, and I'm out.